All right. I have Jay here, Jay Kranda. Am I pronouncing that right? I
But it's,
correct.
who knows? Who
I
knows how to
Jay
say it?
Kranda here, and I am really pumped because he's doing some really cool stuff, which we'll get into. But thanks for coming. I really do appreciate it.
Well, you guys have had a bunch of killer guests, so it's fun to kind of be back on having conversations, especially potentially talking about some AI stuff. I'm always loving hearing what you guys are doing and learning. It's such a fast moving kind of time we're in. So like I'm always like, what are
Well,
other people doing? So I would love to share anything we're doing and we can learn together.
yeah, great. Because that is actually exactly what I want to do is just have a conversation that me and you, like I'm learning from you, maybe you're learning from me. I don't know, but I know there's a lot I can learn from you, and hopefully others can too.
Yeah, so I'm the innovative tech pastor at Saddleback Church in Southern California. I've been at the church over 15 years. It was kind of my first church to be on staff at post college and was our first online pastor. So I was one of the first online pastors to be hired full time into a role. So I was in that for over 10 plus years, moved into a technology role recently. We're kind of overseeing a lot of our tech ecosystem. And so AI is a big part of that. Like, how do we use it? How to be more efficient. I also wrote a book, Online Church is Not the Answer, which kind of documents a lot of my journey with online ministry and how to think about digital in the ministry space.
Yeah. So you're doing a few things, a little bit.
Couple things. Well, like I'm an odd duck because I'm like on staff at church doing technology.
Yeah.
I'm still a pastor, but I float in these other realms. But I like talking to guys like you because you're doing it in a different way, and so I more fit in these conversations. Usually in church space, talking about theology is usually not my default mode. I want
Yeah.
to talk about what Claude is doing
Yeah.
in the past week. And that's
Yeah.
usually not what I talk about with my colleagues. So
Yeah, that's good. That's actually really interesting. And one of the main reasons why I wanted you on here too is because typically the people that I talk to are the like not in the church. They're building something to get many churches, and you're in the church building for your church. And yes, I very much can tell from some conversations we've had and just things I've watched that you're definitely one of the top tech in the church type of people. So
well, I don't know about that, but
uh,
I would love to share. But yeah, of
yeah,
course.
yeah. But not a developer, right? So
Correct.
not done that, which nowadays maybe isn't as big of a deal. I will say a caveat that I think there's definitely always a need and will be a need for true developer engineers. I think that that's going to be a thing forever.
Agreed.
We won't go into that conversation. Yeah, but you have really taken on a lot of the new AI stuff that's coming out as it relates to tech and code. I'm curious. We could probably take this in multiple directions, but I'm curious which kind of lane you want to chat about. Like, what's the coolest thing you've done recently that you want to share with people?
Well, I would probably say I'll start it off this way and we can kind of go in any direction you so desire. So we have, front end developers that are on our staff, and then we have
Mhm.
contract developers that are on our payroll because we're tens of thousand member church. We have a pretty huge tech stack ecosystem. We do everything from, data lakes to, CRM, like infrastructure, our own custom app. And one of the big questions, I was asking as I kind of stepped into my role is how do we use AI to kind of make our ecosystem more efficient, especially in a season where, most churches are feeling a little strapped, like
Mhm.
we're trying to do more with less. We still have a lot, like we're still blessed with a lot, but like, how do we do with more with less? And so one of the pros and cons of me is that the only way I know how to really explain something or empower people to use it is that I have to understand how it works. And
Mm.
so I decided to kind of go, well, I have developers that are smarter than me that somehow report to me. And I need to figure out like, how do I tell them to use this? And I had this really funny conversation about 11 months ago with one of our developers, and it was at like over lunch, and I was asking them some questions about vibe coding and some of these things, and they were very kind of, I would say, a little anti it. They were very down on it, and I always connect it to a conversation I had in seminary, and I actually went to, you have Ed Stetzer here, but I went to the seminary Talbot,
Okay.
and So I know Talbot well. I was at Talbot and I had a similar conversation with a professor at the time. Now, this was a long
Mm,
time ago. Ed wasn't there at the time, but I remember he was really anti using technology in the church. And my natural bent in that moment was not that he was right, but I wanted to know, why does he think that?
mm,
And the same way as with my developer over lunch, where he was like anti vibe coding, I wanted to go, why does he think that? And so I have a natural bent to kind of dig in and ask questions. And so what I kind of told myself is that I'm going to use some of these tools and see the pros and cons of them. What do they do well?
mm.
Where do they break? And so I decided as my first project, as for fun, this is all kind of on my own dime. So I wasn't using church dollars for this. On my own dime, I first signed up for a Lovable account and I wanted to build a web based game. And I don't, did you ever play like addictedgames.com?
I did all the
Did you?
time
Yep.
for, the thing that's really popular now is escape rooms. I did escape rooms on addictive games
Oh, no way.
way back when. Do you
Oh,
remember
I
those?
didn't know they had that. No.
Yes, they would come out with like a new one every week or
Oh,
every
that's
other week,
cool.
and it was a web-based version of it.
Well,
I
like,
love that.
so I think,
Yeah.
we're within the same age range here, but that was a huge thing with that site was
Yep.
something that you could play. And it was like, oh my goodness, I don't need a console. I could just do it in a browser. And I think I could play it at school too at the time on one of my, if I had PC time at the PC lab. Now they all have, computers, but yeah, so I decided to play, I was like, can I build like an 8-bit style game with Lovable? And so I decided, let's do it. And so I kind of took it off Flappy Bird kind of game. And so I decided to build this Flappy Pastor game. And it was web based. It was just kind of a joke, kind of on church planting journey. And so I
Yeah.
built it with Lovable, and I was blown away by how easy it was to iterate and take screenshots, tell it what to do. I'm somebody that's, I'm almost 40, but like I had a blogger account. I built things.
Yeah.
I've used Squarespace, WordPress. I also built way back when I was in high school. I would use AOL website builder stuff. Like I've gone the spectrum of things, but I couldn't believe it was so easy to build this. And then I decided to go the next level. I go, okay, I got to upgrade. I got to go to Claude Code. I got to actually download this. I didn't go full terminal, but I was like, how do I build this in an iOS app? How do I take this code? And I just went through the process of learning how to like download the code from like GitHub and then like bring it into a Claude Code instance and then
Yep.
like open up an Xcode file and build it. And I went through the submission process with Apple, got denied, and like learned it. And the whole point of this whole journey was the pros and cons. And I
Yeah.
learned a lot what it does really well and where it failed. And that allowed me to go back to my team to go, this is where I think it can help us. This is where you still need an engineer. You need an architect engineer that knows how it all works and tells you security issues and so forth. So you can actually right now, so long story short, you can go to flappypastor.com. You can
Okay.
play the web based or you can download the mobile app. I have an app that's live on the iOS store and it was really fun to build. And I learned a lot through the process.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm definitely going to do that. Flatpaster.com.
Yeah.
I'm curious. There's a couple of things. I'm curious about what you found good and bad. But before we do that, I want to go back one step here and ask you if you're okay with sharing your team who was hesitant, resisted to it. What was their reason? Why were they resistant to it?
They were resistant because how sketchy the code was, essentially. They said, like, again, and if you're in this space, you hear this a lot, like, you'll see a tweet on X or something that will say, like, vibe coding's fun until it has to, like, go to production. And they'll
Yeah.
say it's really good at prototyping, but not for scale. And that was kind of the tension there. And I think there's a percentage of that is true. Like you do need, there was that story like a month ago where like a vibe coding instance at like, I think it was Amazon brought down a whole like region of servers, and the point is though, like that's true, but I will say where it is today is a lot better. And of course people should be reviewing code. We do that.
Yeah.
People review code before you go to production.
Yeah.
And so like we have a sandbox and so like I would say yes, but can it do? And then one of the things that really changed in our workflow recently was we started to integrate some of the Claude code instance into our GitHub kind of repository process, and that made them more efficient. So it gave them more confidence. So I think it was just like the code isn't as good as you think. And I actually, that person has come full circle now and they've said, like, oh, you know what? It's actually a lot better than I thought. And they're using it now.
Yeah. Who you're talking to on your team is probably better, much better, developer than me, myself. So take this for what it's worth. But uh, I think what they were saying is very true about 9 months ago, 6 months ago.
I think you're right.
I do think there's still piece of that you need to be careful of now, especially when it comes to security and stuff. You definitely need to have somebody reviewing. I had many experiences where I tried things and it would like you fix something, but it broke another thing, and then you
Agreed.
fix
Yeah.
it and then it broke, and you're just in this cycle where I was like, I just give up. It's not even worth it anymore. But with some of the recent updates in Claude Code, 4.5 to 4.6, really 4.6 now, and with a million context window, it has gotten really good. It is really good. I have been able to get way past any point that I had before in the
Well,
past.
I do think, like, I've seen this said that like the best vibe coders are actually people that are understand how it works. So
Yeah.
I think that's something that still is a little bit of a barrier of entry. Now, so like one of the caveats, I'll kind of put this for those who are listening, because there'd be a spectrum of skill level and knowledge here. But like Lovable, for example, is a like HTML kind of website based type of tool. Lovable is really easy because it's just messing with like HTML type of things on a browser. It's very simple type of stuff.
Mhm.
Claude code gets a little bit more complicated because you're actually like doing things beyond HTML. Like you're messing with SQL, like Python, like it could get deeper. And so what I found was that it's really easy in like to build web-based stuff, but if you kind of move into like systems stuff, it gets a little harder. And so
Mhm.
I've learned a lot through that process where like same thing, like I'll build something and it will just break. And it's like, it's so frustrating. But the thing is that I know enough about the tech stack that I can kind of figure out. And so I still think we're a little bit of ways away from having like the local pastor just building things.
Sure.
Like again, I can be like, I'm super efficient because I'm aware of the whole ecosystem. And so that's where I think there's a little bit of this like false promise still with AI for the normal user. And so that's something I've learned a lot just messing around with it.
Totally with you. I would also say that if you want to learn that though, if you're a person that does want to like get to that level, I feel like we're in an awesome place
Yeah,
where you
you're true.
can
That's
now,
right. Yeah.
right? So it's like, um, totally agree. You can't be there unless you already know some of the background of how coding works and all that. But what you can do while you're building, which is really great, I still do this on things that I don't understand, is I'll ask Claude, what
I
why did you do that? What did it do? And what does that mean? And all that mean?
well,
And I'm
c-
learning as I'm doing it. So
I have a funny story on this recently. So we're on the church management software Rock RMS. We've been on it. That was actually my first job, was to transition our church to that, and it was a huge
okay.
endeavor. And in one of the recent versions of Rock, I think was it 18 or 17, they restructured something where essentially AI can kind of talk to the SQL server a little bit more simple. So it's like, it's really
Yeah.
nice because you can build things kind of beyond, because like there's the one mode for those listening, there's like MCP mode, which is like, it will take control of your browser and do things. That's really nice. It does fail a lot because it kind of has to go through a very logical process,
Mm,
and it doesn't always understand all the pop-ups on your screen. And
mm,
so it's kind of it's interacting with the GUI layer of your computer, which is like
okay.
the visual. But if it can talk directly to your server, it can talk zeros and ones. And
Mm,
it's way more efficient because the MCP mode will like drain your tokens too, because it literally has to like do a cursor, do all this stuff. I do that a lot too, but like, so Rock did this recently. So short story is we have this flash report on the weekend that kind of does all of our attendance. It sits on Rock. It's very basic. It's an HTML display that brings in
yeah.
attendance. There's nothing fancy about it, but it's nice. It's mobile friendly. It works. It shows attendance over the weekend. Well, something broke during Easter, and mainly it broke because our service times started on a Thursday and they went through the weekend, and it was not a typical service range of our
Yeah.
normal schedule. Well, I was like, all this is broken. We have developers that are on like hourly kind of retainer situations. Nobody was available. I decided just to use Claude. I go, can you write a script to force the date range of the load of this template to be this date range? And I literally just
Mm.
sat there at my computer. I did it, it fixed it, and it worked. And it worked, it like solved it. And for, for me, I'm on like $100 a month plan, but like for a max plan, like I was able to fix this thing that literally probably would have cost one of my developers a similar rate just for the hour. And it was crazy. And then this is the
Yeah.
fun story. Later that week, again, in true like fashion, I sat down with my dev and I said, "Can you review how they did this? And am I breaking anything?" And my dev came back to me and looked at the code and said, "Do you know how Claude did this? Because I can't see how they did this." And he thought they were going to like intersect, like in rock language, a block on top of this with HTML to kind of force this load. And we found out that it actually went directly to the SQL Server level and introduced new code. And the
Mm.
point was, he told me, he's like, "That's a very clever way of executing that I would have never thought of."
That's
And so, but the point is that like, now the cool thing is this dev who's amazing, he was like, "I'm going to do," like he got smarter in that moment.
yeah.
And so this is where, to your point, AI is doing things now more efficient. So it was just a cool moment of like Claude, like I did this thing as not a dev, like with my dev, and then we got smarter in that moment.
That's a really good, real example of somebody getting smarter by just utilizing that. That's really cool. Does Rock gives you the ability to see all of its code? Like it's built and installed in yours. So how did
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Claude know all of that?
I feel bad. I feel like we're going too nerdy on this for some people, but
We
maybe,
might be. We might be.
but no, I mean, essentially, so obviously, like we have our own Rock instance that is sitting on our servers. So
Yeah.
we have that. Essentially, Rock, they've done a lot of upgrades recently where they provide quite a bit of access to a layer one data
Okay.
structure. There is deeper layers that we don't have access to, but what's really nice about Rock, because it's a custom instant and there's quite a bit exposed, one of the most powerful things with using Claude on Rock is the reporting features. All the data sits there in your Rock instance. And if you're an admin, you can generate reports and data views seamlessly.
Yeah.
Like we generated literally within 45 minutes. One of the things is we use Rock forms, and these forms obviously is how we generate all of our capturing of data over a weekend. I wanted to create this special report where you could put in a form name and it would break down the data of the form real time. And I literally just told Claude, "This is what I want. Can you create a new report?" And because all the data sits in our instance and we have access to this, it was created it seamlessly. Where it gets complicated is
Mm.
that if I had to also pull in data maybe from our text provider, from our email client, for this, that's where it gets complicated. But everything within Rock, it's really powerful. And it really shows where AI is really powerful is when you control the data. It gets complicated if you have to pull in data from Facebook and YouTube. But like, no, Rock does this really well. I will say I'm hesitantly like testing this as myself. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
vetting we're doing right now, but I've been super impressed by Rock with what we can do with reports.
That's cool. Yes, we're getting very technical and maybe in the weeds of a few things here. But the reason why I actually ask is for kind of what you're getting into is I have this sort of thinking about where software and is going. And because everyone, I think at some point in the future is going to feel like they have the ability to customize and make and create all this stuff, that's almost going to be part of the features that most software needs to have is the
Yeah,
ability to do all of this. So I think that if we're building things now, at least that's my thinking is we need to build in a way that people have the ability to have at least some layer. You're calling it one layer. Maybe there's a second or third layer in Rock, but at least some layer where you can give the code, the data,
agreed.
something to Claude to have all of that so that you can do your own thing on top of it. It's still valuable. Rock is valuable because it's not something you want to create from scratch. But if they've hid everything from you, you might be, a year from now, you might feel like, why can't I just recreate
Yeah,
this?
why can't I just build? I mean, the biggest tension is building it is kind of straightforward now with a lot of the tools. I think maintaining it is the more annoying things.
Yeah.
I think anybody who builds software understands maintaining bug fixes, updates. That's where you kind of get this like drain, it's like a 10,
Yep.
15% drain on your resources, just kind of because like, yeah. And so like again, like we have a mobile app and, one of the things I do for the team, we have an Android and an iOS app and I have to go through test flight builds and it's the most annoying thing ever. I'm actually trying to create a workflow right now with some simulator situations where iPhone mirroring where you could do testing
That's that.
with,
Yeah.
yeah. And so there's still some drawbacks on some of those things, but I do think you're right. Like I just had a conversation with the Rock team where I said, can you give us more access to this? Because it's really like we had an instance recently, like this is like a real problem where a couple of our members got spam emails and we were trying to diagnose if there was a data leak somewhere in our
Mhm.
process. And I kind of found out that I couldn't have a view in Rock to see everybody who exported something. And I tried with Claude to kind of generate in the audit logs, do you keep track of this?
Yeah.
And essentially, they didn't have a default way. Now, they have workarounds where they have something called workflows. And I was like, oh, could you create a workflow? Anytime somebody hits the export button, it logs it. Like,
Yeah.
and essentially, yes, but it was a little complicated because it's obviously reliant off of those jobs executing every time those buttons are clicked. And there's a lot of layers to this, but that's where I went back to the Rock team and I said, hey, I know you guys track this. You just don't expose it to me.
Hmm.
So this is a feature request where I'm going to them. I go, can you expose more of this data so that because we no longer have an issue of querying and generating views with Claude, we just need more access. And
Yep.
they are being very accommodating to that. They see the power of it. And so like, that's the stuff, but that's where like, you just mess around with it and you're like, oh, this is awesome. Can you give us more? And so like, I think you're right that I think more companies are going to have to do that because that's, again, we want to use your ecosystem, but we want to do
Yeah.
more in the ecosystem.
Exactly. Yeah. Can the software of the future be you buy this thing and it works for almost everybody, but it's only 80% of the way there
Yep.
for each individual person, right? Like, because each person now has the ability to really tailor it to exactly what they want to do. I see that as a future in software. So yeah, I don't know if you're listening and you're building software, maybe there's something in there for you, but hey, this was great. Thanks, Jay.
This is totally like, I would just generally say, Corey, and you're doing it, I'm doing it. And I'm doing it with my kids too. Like I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. And, I'm showing them how this stuff
Yep.
works because I want them to know how to be more efficient because it is nuts how much you can do. I will say there's still a learning curve of how to like automate the stuff you already do.
Hmm.
But like I was just this morning playing around. I was trying to dig into Claude Cowork and I was trying to figure out and I literally last night, my wife fell asleep and I was watching in bed like tips on Claude Cowork. And I'm like sitting there because I'm like, this is really good, but I need to know how to do it. And so I think
Yeah.
YouTube is your greatest strength. Like just watch stuff. And then I would encourage you, like I created Flappy Pastor, create something for fun as a hobby, because that's the way you actually learn
Yep.
how it's good, where it struggles, and you learn a lot through those problem solving things. And so like, again, I'm not saying you need to go launch something for your team, your ministry tomorrow, but have a hobby. Again, I probably spent $200 and I created a iOS app. It's
Crazy.
crazy to think like I joke around. I try to hire somebody to create an 8-bit game like probably 5 years ago on Fiverr, and it like was terrible. And now this is so much better, and it's actually pretty fun.
And
It's pretty fun.
it's fun. You built something. Yeah, maybe it costs $200. If you were building an app, yes, long
Yeah,
ago,
yeah. Like the
way more than
developer account alone was $100 with Apple, so that's like one of the
but, like, what you learned, the education
yeah.
you got was probably way more valuable than even the
Agreed.
$200,
Yep.
I would imagine, yeah. So
Yep.
I'm with you. Don't wait for like the perfect idea to go start. If you do that, you're going to wait too long. Like get it going and it just starts, oh,
Yep.
it could be done for this. You could use it for that. I totally agree. Maybe next time we can talk more about Claude Cowork because I'm curious more on how that's
Oh, yeah.
working. Um,
Yeah, I'm new at it. So yeah, let's circle back. I would be game.
yeah, yeah. Well, I could probably talk like this to you for hours. This was a lot of fun. And yeah, maybe we can have you back and we talk about Cloud
Yeah,
Cowork at the
I
next
would be
one.
game.
Well, hey, before we go, I think you already mentioned some of the things, but if I'm not remembering right, how can people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you,
Yeah.
or if you want them to, or where should they reach out?
Yeah, if you go to jkranda.com, you can see there's links to Flappy Pastor and my book as well. Definitely check out. I have a book that's on Amazon and Audible about online church is not the answer. That's kind of dives into some of my thinking around this stuff. I really wrote it to help churches and ministry leaders kind of go through with their volunteer team. So it's a helpful resource. So you can go to my website or you just look up online churches not the answer on Amazon as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. Appreciate it. See ya.